Hello, my name is Leo Saguiguit, and I'm the saxophone professor at the University of Missouri School of Music. In this video, I'm going to perform this year's etudes for the Missouri All-State Band auditions for saxophone. At the end of each excerpt, I'll give you some helpful hints to help you in your practice sessions. We'll be focusing on the two main etudes in this video, but if you would like to hear audio recordings of the Universal Prescott excerpts, you can download them in the link in the description below. The etude on page 9 is, of course, the technical etude. And so the emphasis here is going to be on the pulse and the clarity of your notes. So the evenness of your fingers and the rhythmic flow is going to be very important. So fast tempos are going to vary from etude to etude depending on the context. So you want to make sure you pick a tempo that you're going to be able to play this under control and with accuracy and still convey the spirit of the music. So when learning, always start slow, just to get familiar with the notes, and then gradually start to get the notes moving faster. Make sure you use your metronome. So, and in the process, be sure you incorporate the accurate articulations and the dynamics at these slow tempos so that you keep ingraining them and developing that muscle memory as you get faster and faster. So reaching that ultimate tempo will be much easier. What I don't want you to do is listen to how fast I'm playing it and make that your starting point. Start much, much slower because that's the way I had to do it in order to get it that fast. The other things that I want you to look for are any kinds of patterns that you see. There's going to be lots of chromatic scales, there are going to be regular scales, and there, of course, are going to be arpeggios. So really kind of isolating these passages are going to help you reinforce some of this muscle memory. A lot of this stuff is going to keep coming back. That's why we play scales all the time, to develop that muscle memory. And that, of course, will help you learn this music much more quickly and much more securely. So for the tempo, it says Allegro Furioso. And this not only tells us the tempo, but it gives us the mood. So to translate that, it means fast and with anger. All right? So it has to be very intense and very assertive. So here we really want to pay close attention to the articulations, the accents, the staccatos. That's what's going to help make the music come alive. And it could make your performance of it stand out from the rest of the crowd when they're performing it. So we also want to take a look at the phrases. And this is a very traditional music. So first of all, always kind of check to see if they're 4-bar phrases. And lots of times, they're going to be in 4-bar phrases. Sometimes they're in 2, sometimes they're slightly extended, but generally they're going to follow a very easy format, generally an arch of some sort. And then you want to really think about moving your air through that phrase and really getting that to connect into the other segments of the music. When it comes to breathing, try to breathe after the long notes in this particular excerpt. In line 5, you can take, if you're running out of air, you can try to take a quick breath after the staccato before it jumps up. And also a similar thing in line 8 and 9. So there are spots here that if you need to grab a breath, as you can see in my performance, sometimes I had to grab a breath real quick, and it may not have been the most May have been a very awkward place to do it, but sometimes you have to figure out one out of necessity and hope that it doesn't really interrupt the flow. Same thing when it comes to fingerings, is really kind of determine what fingerings you're going to use and use all of the alternate fingerings that are at your disposal. So if you don't know a lot of your alternate fingerings, it's time to learn them, especially when it comes to side B flats, side Cs, the palm D. There are lots of these things that are going to show up in the music, and this is certainly not an exception. For example, some of the B flat fingerings, you have the option of using a side B flat or using the bis fingering. And sometimes one's going to sound a little bit better than the other. And of course, how well you can move with them. So that's why it's important to really get to know these alternate fingerings so they feel very natural to them. When it comes to interpretation, you really want to look at the dynamics. This is a very fun, energetic piece. So you want to make things as dramatic as you can to really convey that character, that anger in there. And of course, follow your dynamics that are written in there. But at the same time, you can also enhance them by exaggerating certain things or giving subtle crescendos and decrescendos. And rather than just going a full stretch of a single dynamic, find those places where it would make it interesting to give it a little bit of shape while still maintaining that general dynamic level. So for example, if you look at lines 4 through 6 and 8 through 10, you've got these long stretches of forte, but you can be a little bit more creative with that. And remember that the style that you're going for. So these contrasts that you decide to create will really help bring out that intensity. And when it comes to the sound, this is a very kind of sound forward type of piece. So you really want that sound to be very focused. So make sure you keep your air well supported, use your fast air, get through the ends of those phrases, and you're going to have a very clean, crisp sound. The articulation also, very crisp articulations. So make sure that you make good contact with the reed in your staccatos and also in your initial attacks, but careful not to get underneath the reed or else you'll get those slap tongues. So the A major etude on page 29 is, of course, the lyrical one. And so your priority is going to be on expression and phrasing and the beauty of your sound. So pulse is less of a priority here. So there can be a little bit of rhythmic flexibility, but you always, of course, want to be aware of that pulse and not take too much time. So always work within that framework so that you are just kind of working around the pulse if you'd like to make it a little bit more flexible. And since it's very lyrical, there's going to be a lot of attention to your tone quality. So in this particular one, your vibrato is going to be very necessary. You're trying to emulate more of a singing style. So think about how a singer would approach this. This means using a little bit slower vibrato, maybe wider at times, and maybe even experiment with speeding up the tempo on long notes, speeding up the speed of the vibrato, slowing it down. There's lots of things you can do to make this a lot more interesting. So if you haven't started using vibrato in everyday playing, this is the time to start. The other key to good tone quality is making sure that you've got good air support throughout. And the important thing is to know what your phrases are so that you're directing your air to the ends of those phrases. Now let's talk about tempo. This says andante. And literally andante means walking. So this is a walking pace. And a lot of students think andante means slow, and it's really a little bit faster than slow. So think of a nice walking pace, not too fast, not too slow. And look at your phrases. These are typically 4-bar phrases in here, and I think the arches are going to be pretty obvious here. So you've got to be very patient in the opening because this is where I hear a lot of mistakes from students not counting, especially long notes and rests. And it's very easy to kind of zone out because they're long notes and you've got to really get that going. But make sure that you keep subdividing throughout, even if you've got a half note, especially if you've got that double dotted quarter note, make sure you're subdividing that to make sure you're getting the precise rhythm. Because you want to show your listeners and the adjudicators that you are playing with precision. Now, for the expressive part of it, the dynamics are going to be very important. There are going to be a lot more contrasts in this etude, so you really want to make a commitment as much as you can to these loud and soft dynamics. Now, of course, everything is relative, so if you really want to make that contrast, you really have to kind of exaggerate a little bit. And as you get to know the piece a little bit more, you can start to adjust the volumes to make it work the way you want to present it. There is no specific way to work these dynamics, but there are some printed dynamics that you should follow and work around that within those sections. For the rhythmic aspect, we want to be really aware of the pulse, but we don't want to approach the rhythms too stiffly. We don't want to make it sound too mechanical, all right? So it needs to have kind of a little bit of that natural flow rather than a metronomic feel, especially when it comes to the faster notes, the 16th notes. So make sure that there's a nice flow to it, and especially don't rush, all right? We need to make this a very relaxing feel to it. Now, on some of the special features here, we've got a lot of different ornamentations everywhere. We've got some grace notes, we've got some turns, we've got some trills, and you can kind of hear how I did them in the recording. What you should really do is to make sure you learn the music without any of those ornaments beforehand so you know how the flow of the passage works. Then when you add the ornamentation, you want to keep that flow consistent so that you're not stretching the time, not rushing. So you're just adding that little bit of spontaneity in there. That's the whole purpose of these, is to give it a little bit of lilt on some of these passages. And then you'll also see a cadenza in line 5. And with a cadenza, that allows for a little bit more freedom. It's really just a place where kind of time suspends, and it allows the soloist to kind of make what sounds like it's spontaneous and improvised. That was the origin of these cadenzas. They were originally improvised. This happens to be written in, so we want to still keep that character of a spontaneous gesture before we conclude. So by the time we get to line 6, that's when we want to resume the original pulse there. Now, let's talk about fingerings, because when we are playing something really lyrical, we want to make sure the passages sound as smooth as possible. And there's some fingerings that are going to sound kind of awkward. There might be a little bump, or there's a change in timbre. So really weigh all of your options. Side B flats, side Cs, side bis B flat, palm fingerings. Those are lots of different options. And so look for those places where you think it could sound a little bit better. All right. The tricky areas are when you're crossing the break. And so a lot of that can be fixed by making sure you keep your air moving, but sometimes you can also find an alternate fingering that will keep that sound consistent through that break in the instrument. Thanks for checking out this video, and I hope it's been helpful as you prepare for your All-State Etudes. If you have any questions about this music or any of the other excerpts, please feel free to drop me a line. My email address will be listed below. And if you have any questions about the saxophone studio or any of the ensembles or any other questions about the School of Music at the University of Missouri, please visit our website. And that is also going to be listed in the description below. And on this YouTube channel, you will also find lots of other performances from our ensembles, from the jazz ensembles to the wind ensemble, also the saxophone studio. So please check that out, and good luck.